So hello everyone, welcome to our environmental and climate policy discussion. And this is the Environmental Justice Pathway Summit. And so I'm really excited to get this portion kicked off. And so here is our run of show for today for this policy discussion. So we're going to start off with the Environmental Climate Justice Policy Panel. We're going to have breakout room discussions around 12:30, and then we're going to have a report back. And so I'm really excited to get this kicked off, and then I'll provide some more instructions as we move forward. So again, I'm Haley K. Scott, and I'm the Climate Justice Grassroots Organizer with Beyond Toxics and the NAACP Eugene-Springfield unit number 1119. And I'm also one of the Environmental Justice Pathway Summit organizers. And so we're just going to jump right into it. And before I introduce our panelists for today, I just wanted to give a quick recap of like what we're going to be talking about. And so what this policy discussion is really meant to do is to highlight the environmental, climate, and social justice organizations and the work that they're doing across the state of Oregon and the actions that we're taking to ensure that historically disadvantaged communities are centered and prioritized in the decision-making process. So in this session, we're going to hear about campaigns where grassroots leaders feel investments need to be made in our communities. And then following the panel discussion, we will have an interactive breakout group discussion with all of our attendees here today. And so the first one I wanted to highlight really quickly is the environmental justice campaign that Beyond Toxics and the NAACP have been pushing forward this legislative session. And so we are currently trying to get Senate Concurrent Resolution 17, which would establish an environmental justice framework for the state of Oregon forward. And it actually just got passed through the Senate a couple of days ago. So I'm really excited to make that announcement. And then we have an upcoming work session for our House Bill 2488, Equity in Climate and Land Use on Monday. And so I hope you all can take a look at the Oregon Legislative Information System website and check both of those bills and pieces of legislation out. And then we're also going to hear from Joel Iboa, the Oregon Just Transition Alliance founding executive director, and hopefully a little bit about the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Campaign. And then we're going to hear about the wonderful Oregon Water Futures Project that is being led partly by the University of Oregon. And so we're going to hear from a few of those representatives. So I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can introduce our wonderful panelists for today. And so today, again, we have here with us Joel Iboa, the founding executive director of the Oregon Just Transition Alliance. We have Cheyenne Holliday and Professor Alai Reyes-Santos from the Oregon Water Futures Project. Cheyenne is the associate project manager with the project, and Dr. Alai Reyes-Santos is an associate professor in the Indigenous, Race, and Ethnic Studies Department at the University of Oregon. And then finally, I'm really excited to say that we are joined by Miles Palacios, the legislative director from Representative Campos' office, who's going to give us an update on the work that they're doing. And so I'm going to pass it off to Joel now to get us kicked off and tell us a little bit about the Oregon Just Transition Alliance and the work that they're doing. So go ahead, Joel.
Hey folks, Joel Iboa here. So great to be with you on a Saturday morning. Thanks so much, Haley, and for Beyond Toxics for joining me, and of course, all of my co-hosts. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the Oregon Just Transition Alliance and some of what we're up to. So just as a little background, for me, I was born and raised here in Eugene, Oregon. So shout out to the folks in Southern Willamette Valley. But I got into environmental justice work as a former employee of Beyond Toxics. So out of college, I went to Beyond Toxics for 2 years. And after that, I spent the last 4 years at CAUSA, Oregon as a coalition manager fighting for immigrant rights. But a little history in the Oregon Just Transition Alliance. We are an alliance of frontline organizations and frontline communities advocating for racial, economic, and climate justice. So really, as Haley mentioned, right, the Alliance of OJTA, we represent organizations across the state who represent people and advocate for folks that are on the front lines of climate change, right? They're on the front lines of economic exploitation and, of course, environmental racism. And so part of the idea is that we're organizing to create collective ownership over our future, and to move Oregon towards an economy that values workers and also the environment. So the Oregon Just Transition Alliance started back in 2017. And just for some context, this was right as we had a new federal administration, right? So from 2008 to 2016, we were under the Obama administration. And then of course, from 17 until 20, we were under Donald Trump's federal administration. So really there was a lot at stake, not just for immigrant rights, but a lot of other movements across the country. And particularly, we were concerned about environmental justice communities. I'm sure, as many of you know, the EPA was severely cut at the legs. A lot of environmental justice principles and programs that happened at the federal level were paused or, if not, completely terminated. And so already beforehand, even during the Obama administration, we, as environmental justice advocates, knew that policies and practices and regulations were not where they needed to be. But with the emergence of this new awful federal administration, we knew it was going to be worse. And so in 2017, we got together, OPAL, which is one of the organizations that's part of the Oregon Just Transition Alliance, OPAL, Environmental Justice Oregon, convened folks from across the state to have a conversation about how can we form a powerful statewide movement for a just transition, right? And just to make it really clear, just transition refers to us going from a system that we're currently in right now, which exploits the land and exploits workers, to an economy and a world in which we are working one-on-one with the land, making sure it's regenerative, and of course, not exploiting the folks who live there. So we did that. We met in 17, and over the next 3 years, there was webinars and there was convenings. I participated in a few of them myself. And then eventually we started to gel, right? We began to have conversations about, well, how could we begin to have a discussion about what to do? There's so many crises, there's so many ecological disasters. And so eventually in 2019, members of OJTA came together to draft a platform for the Oregon Green New Deal. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, along with the brilliant organizers at the national level that came up with the Green New Deal, inspired folks in Oregon. We said, okay, what would a Green New Deal look like here in Oregon? And how could we make this a living document that had input from community? So that's what we did. So in 2019, folks put together a little platform. But then in 2020, we said, okay, part of the principles of environmental justice is that communities speak for themselves. And we need meaningful participation from community members in order for it to be called environmental justice. And so that's exactly what we did. In 2020, we organized the Green New Deal listening tour, as well as the Frontline Organizers Rising cohort. And this floor, what we call the floor cohort, organized a statewide Oregon Green New Deal listening tour. Unfortunately, 2020 threw a doozy at us, right? We were still in the middle of a global pandemic. And so originally the plan was we're going to go across the state in community, in person, sit with folks and have conversations, right? But we had to pivot. Instead, we had virtual listening sessions during 2020. And we learned a lot. And that Green New Deal listening session is available on our website. But over the summer of 2020, a few months ago, the steering committee of the Oregon Just Transition Alliance did two things. One, it decided that it was time to spin off from OPAL and become its own independent statewide alliance. And then, of course, the steering committee also, based on conversations from the Oregon Green New Deal listening tour, decided to endorse the Energy Democracy Campaign, now known as the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Campaign. And I'm going to talk a bit about what that is, but just wanted to let folks know that this is the first joint campaign as an alliance for OJTA. And it's the first time that we are flexing as a state and as a collective of organizations that represent environmental justice communities, our collective power. The idea is that we're hustling for our communities, but we're using this campaign as a way to build a powerful movement for a just transition in Oregon, but also as an opportunity to inspire other states and other folks across the country to do the same. So I'll briefly talk about the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Campaign. We have 3 bills on the docket. But just for some framing, right, the reason why we chose this campaign is because 2020 has brought a lot of hardships to Oregonians. People have been struggling to just live, to put food on the table, to stay in their homes. And then on top of that, having to worry about, this economic recession that has laid off so many people. And then to add insult to injury, we had an awful summer of wildfire smoke that decimated a ton of communities, particularly BIPOC communities, immigrant communities, communities that have frontline workers. So when you compile the fact that we have a pandemic in which people are struggling to pay their bills, wildfire, a few months ago, we had an awful snowstorm that left over 330,000 Oregonians without power. And then the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And then on top of that, before the climate crisis, it was just too much. And so that's why we decided to launch the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Campaign. We wanted to relieve some pressure from our families by reducing energy bills, supporting home upgrades, and of course, continue to help keep our families healthy and create good jobs and clean energy projects across Oregon. So I want to talk briefly about 2 of our bills that I want to couple together. It's been often said that this pandemic, that we're all in the same boat together during this pandemic. We're all stuck at home, but the truth of the matter is that we're not all in the same boat. Some of us are in yachts with hired help and drinking champagne, eating caviar, waiting for this thing to be over. Some of us are drowning. Some of us have already drowned, right? And so when we talk about this boat that we're all in together, we have to recognize that we're not all in the same boat, but in an attempt for us to make sure that those who are sinking don't sink and are able to stay afloat, we launched 2 bills that help protect people's boats and build them up, help build their home. The first bill is energy affordability. So this is House Bill 2475. The idea is that we are going to decrease utility costs for families who are already struggling during this recession by establishing a low-income utility rate class. If you make less money, you don't have to pay as much for your utility bills. We thought this was something that was fair, something that was necessary. A lot of folks struggle to pay their bills. So House Bill 2475 is one of the bills that keeps the boat afloat. The second bill is the Healthy Homes Bill. It's not enough to have to make sure that you're not paying a ton of money to keep your home warm or cool in the summertime. We also wanted to make sure that the boats that people are actually in their homes are healthy, which is why we launched House Bill 2842, also known as the Healthy Homes Bill. The idea behind this bill is to support some home upgrades to improve the health of families across Oregon. So if you have, currently there are programs to weatherize people's homes. If you have drafty windows or a drafty door, you're able to access those things. However, if you have a hole in your roof, if you have mold in your house, there's some gaps there. So Healthy Homes is the idea is that we're going to ask for $20 million for the Oregon Health Authority to administer a program where renters and homeowners will be eligible and able to access this fund in order to make upgrades. Over half of the homes in Oregon were built before 1978. And so even before the pandemic, we often talk about outdoor air pollution, but sometimes indoor air pollution can be as bad, if not worse. So we need this bill. So between the Healthy Homes Bill, the Energy Affordability Bill, those are our attempts to alleviate pressure for some families. And then finally, our most ambitious bill is 100% clean energy for all. It's not enough for us to make energy affordable and accessible. We want to make sure that our energy system is working for us. So due to the fact that we're in economic recession, we wanted to make sure that we're able to create living wage jobs in the renewable energy sector, and also to invest in local energy projects that are good for our communities and that reduce pollution, while at the same time achieving 100% clean energy as soon as possible. Currently, our hope is that by 2040, we'll be able to source 100% clean energy on all our utilities across the state of Oregon. So we're really proud. Those are our 3 bills. I'll talk a little bit more later about some of the other components of our campaign, but that's the short and quick version. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joel, for giving us that overview of the Oregon Clean Energy Opportunity Campaign, the Oregon Green New Deal, and then the Oregon Just Transition Alliance. And I dropped a couple of links in the chat for folks if you're interested in reading a little bit more, especially about the Oregon Just Transition principles and just what's going on in the legislature with those 3 bills that Joel mentioned. And so I would now like to invite Cheyenne, Holliday, and Professor Alai Reyes-Santos to tell us a little bit about the Oregon Water Futures Project. Let's take it away.
Thank you so much for having us. It's just an honor to be here with all of you, with my colleagues, with all the activists in this call and this presentation. So I'll start by kind of framing our conversation, and then Cheyenne will be presenting some of our findings. And I want to start in a prayer mode, honoring the sun, the sky, the land, the air that surrounds us and that gives us life in this place. Sustaining us through this work, thanking the land and her ancestral stewards wherever we find ourselves, honoring the ancestors that bring us here to do what is just, and all the people who took time to share with us stories of water, of how they know water, how they care for water, how they love water, and also when they don't have access to water that they need for life as well. We want to clarify that our presentation is not comprehensive. We talked to multiple communities in the state, and of course we are still in the stakeholder engagement process, which we'll be doing over the next 2 years. So I just want to clarify that we are really looking forward to have more conversations with people about this, and including the input of multiple communities. Here we are sharing with you a sliver of the work, some common threads across communities, and hoping to open avenues for more engagement and feedback. We also have a report that's going to be launched in May. There's a final report of the project. It's going to be around 100 pages. I know that Joel already got a little sneak peek of it. And there we'll have the common threads that we found across communities, but also specific needs of specific communities and also specific experiences that people have around water in the state. So for example, with the Chinook Indian Nation, the question of federal recognition is really central. When we talk with people in Portland and Multnomah County, talking about the question of dams and impact on water quality, as well the pollution concerns in the Willamette and the Columbia River Gorge. NAACP participants in Eugene, Oregon talked a lot about water for food gardens and community gardens, and what does it mean to be able to afford water to produce food. Pecun and Evil Cree, we had all these conversations about water in fields, both to wash people's hands, to drink water, the quality of the water, and so on and so forth. Unite Oregon participants in Clackamas County talked to us about affordability of water and mistrust of water as well. And for those of you who really want to learn more about the details of how each community engaged this conversation about water, we hope to share through Beyond Toxics and NAACP with the participants in this conference, our final report in May. So you'll be hearing more from us. And also, if you want to chat more about collaborative community engagement around water justice in the state and how we did the design and tailored with each community that we've been working with over the past 2 years, we would love to have those conversations too, as the state moves to think about water planning that's community that engages BIPOC and low-income rural communities. So that's a little bit of an introduction, and now I'll leave you with Cheyenne.
Yeah, thank you, Alai. So just to set the stage for the project, since Oregon's founding, water resource decisions have created wealth for some and disparities for other. And this starts with the broken treaties between the US government and sovereign tribal nations. These power dynamics continue to influence who makes decisions, reinforcing a policy and funding cycle that is consistently dominated by the same voices. This creates a huge gap between the conversations at the state and local decision makers are having and the daily experiences of many Oregonians. These systems also ignore the traditional and ecological knowledge held by Oregon tribes, Native communities, and Indigenous peoples on how to care for water, as well as the ecological values and practices that communities of color and lower income households contribute to the state. And so the Oregon Water Futures Project hopes to address these disparities and conversation gaps by illuminating what water justice means to Oregonians on the front lines of our water challenges and through conversations and partnerships. The project goals were to lift up voices, identify community priorities for water and culturally specific resiliency, build capacity around water advocacy, and foster a statewide water justice movement. Like Alai talked about, the communities we partnered with were Pacoon, the Chinook Indian Nation, Uvalcree, Unite Oregon, Verde, the coalitions of communities of color, and the NAACP in Eugene-Springfield. It's important to mention that over the course of the project, we had to constantly remain flexible and keep adjusting our approach during the year of 2020. All of our community partners faced new and shifting workloads as the pandemic, natural disasters, and the political climate provoked multiple and consistent states of emergency that threatened physical and economical health, economical survival, as well as a sense of safety in the communities that we consulted with. With all of that happening in 2020, we were able to conduct 2 online gatherings and 75 phone interviews. These community engagements were held in Spanish, Burmese, Nepali, English, and Mam, with a total of 104 participants from Native, Latinx, Black, and migrant communities. Most of our participants were lower income or working class, many were renters, but we also had some homeowners participate. So thinking about some of the values that or some of the themes that we found from these conversations were the participants were motivated to learn more about their water, and this is an area that we could support community leadership in. The water resource challenges are tied to community capacity needs. So thinking about federal recognition of Indian tribes, youth education, and social cohesion. And this might mean that accessing water policy making and advocacy can be out of reach at times. A good portion of our participants distrust and don't know where their drinking water comes from. And they also might not know where to get that information. Some of our participants who rented shared that they don't see or have a physical water bill because their water bill could be included in their monthly rent. Many do not see a water quality report, and there's also a lack of regulation and requirements for landlords to provide information on their domestic wells. We noticed that water affordability and water quality are linked, and that there is far less fear and distrust in urban areas, including Portland. Something else about affordability is the Chinook Indian Nation not being able to afford water in their own territory is an added insult to the history of colonialism. And we also had discussions around emergency preparedness. So in 2018, Salem had an algae crisis, and these communities experienced shortages of water and price gouging on bottled water. They also lacked public health information and also were receiving misinformation. This led to fear and economic hardship. Then we had the 2020 wildfires in Oregon, and this brought up conversations around emergency preparedness, and there was a fear of not having a place to go or a way to get there, as well as not having an emergency plan in place. A positive major theme we found was community-based organizations are trusted information resources, and funding them to be active partners in these communities is essential. So thinking about the infrastructure needs that we want from the communities are in places like Independence and Umatilla, seasonal flooding has prevented people from going to work. It has damaged infrastructure and created public health concerns. In the lower Columbia River, it's greatly damaged and it threatens species that the Chinook Indian Nation members rely on. And Chinook Indian Nation they're very eager to engage in this restoration. Some of the participants also adapted to not flushing their toilets at certain times of the day, and they are also concerned about not being able to afford to dig wells deeper if development impacts aquifers. And people enjoy visiting rivers and lakes, but they tend to distrust the water and are afraid of water quality concerns. And this may be a place or an opportunity to address this and improve people's connection and trust in water. Thinking about small water systems, we heard from participants in farm worker housing that their water is delivered infrequently in the winter months due to the snow being able and like the water being able to get there, and also community rationing. So thinking about what's next for the Oregon Water Futures Project, currently this work is leading to an Oregon Water Justice framework that addresses community priorities with a policy agenda. We hope to build and invest in community leadership capacity, and we hope this project leads to building a network around water and environmental justice in Oregon. Alai, do you have anything else to add?
No, nothing, that's plenty. We'll have plenty to discuss for later as well. Thank you so much, Cheyenne, for working with me today on this. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, I actually forgot something. Thank you. I forgot to mention that Willamette Partnership and Oregon Environmental Council are also really important partners on the work and have helped to found it as well.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Cheyenne and Alai. That was a great overview. I'm so excited to see the final product from all of those conversations. I'll just say, as a representative from the NAACP, I really enjoyed being able to partner with Cheyenne and Alai on this project. I found it very meaningful and a great learning opportunity. And so thanks again for joining us. And folks, we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more with both Cheyenne and Alai in the second portion of this event, this policy discussion in our breakout rooms. And so keep your questions handy. We will be in those discussions together. And so now I would like to invite Miles Palacios from Representative Campos Office to join us and give us a policy update on what's going on. Thanks, Miles.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Haley. As you mentioned, my name is Miles Palacios. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the legislative director for Representative Campos, and it's an honor to be on this panel with all these wonderful agents of change here. And so really excited to be able to talk a bit about Representative Campos. Representative Campos is a freshman legislator this session, also the youngest woman legislator in Oregon's history at 25 years old, which is exciting to see this change at that level, and what that means for opportunities for young folks to be involved in our political landscapes here in Oregon, but also what it means for young women of color as well. Representative Campos, to give a little bit of a background into what she was focusing on moving into the legislature in this session. She ran with these tenets of a huge focus on healthcare and housing. The committee assignments that she has now as a legislator are housing, and she's a vice chair as a freshman, which is really exciting. Healthcare, and then we have redistricting, the Ways and Means, housing, and then also the COVID-19 subcommittee. And though she's not on the House Energy and Environment, she supports a lot of the policies that are coming from that committee, and has the opportunity to discuss those bills with a lot of her colleagues. She started a progressive caucus where Representative Pham was able to talk about a lot of the bills, Representative Pham, who is on that committee, and flag things for that caucus to really focus on and push, as well as in the BIPOC caucus, those conversations have happened as well. And so with her experience, she has a very, I think, beautiful experience that needs to be represented in the legislature, the lived experience of housing instability and access, a lack of access to healthcare. And those are things that she has brought with her into her work as a case manager at Family Promise of Beaverton. So those lived experiences mixed with everything that she does in her day job alongside being a legislator really shows the intersectionality, and like the social determinants of health, where environmental justice is incredibly important, and climate justice as well. So a lot of the thoughts that she's had moving into this is like, where can she support these items in the communities that she's at? So where in healthcare can she support these items? Where in housing can she support these items? And so she's a proud supporter of the bills of the amazing sheet of legislation that Clean Energy Opportunities Campaign has brought with healthy homes and the Clean Energy for All and Oregon energy affordability. But some other bills that she has been focused on are the household hazardous wastes. With this pandemic, we've also seen just a huge uptick in the hazardous waste that is in homes. With folks who are being quarantined and not being able to go to hospitals and spaces like that. And so making sure that there is a path forward for those items of waste to be handled appropriately. But then also really focusing on the committees the communities that are frontline communities, which is disproportionately our Indigenous, our BIPOC communities, our low-income communities that tend to be left to the wayside a lot, that we see in not just in our government, but in the policies that they pass through. And so pushing her colleagues to support those types of policies is incredibly important. And so one bill that she is really excited that has been her priority this year has been expanding Medicaid to the entire undocumented population of Oregon. And that bill is HB 3352. And there's another vehicle, HB 2164, which is a wonderful opportunity there. Those two bills, one, the 2164 was greatly supported and built together by the folks who built Cover All Kids, the Oregon Latino Health Coalition, and the Governor's Equity and Racial Equity Council has done an amazing job at building the foundation there and working with the full coverage bill of 3352 with Representative Campos. They're hoping to make sure that by the end of this session, we're walking away with some sort of expansion for our underrepresented communities. And so I think at this point, it's just really important that the types of things that Representative Campos is hoping to achieve is to expand this access to healthcare, expand access to shelter, and ensure that there is a lens of environmental justice placed on it throughout all of that. So another really beautiful thing that I think I'll just say in closing is that trying to pair those conversations together is really important. And there's also opportunities that are going to be looking at in pairing Medicaid with possible housing. It's something that Washington County is doing with connecting it to the Medicaid waiver application. It's something that Arizona has done and is now being piloted in Washington County. So we're hoping that this expansion of access will help the communities that are on the front line of our climate crisis. And I think that is something that is really important. I definitely think that if you would like to learn more about the legislature and all the things that these folks are doing, checking in with Representative Campos, checking in with the wonderful things that Representative Pham is doing, and supporting, those are a couple of my favorite stars of the freshman class. But thank you so much for allowing me to kind of give a little bit of an update about what this office is doing, what we're seeing in the legislature this session.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Miles. That was great to get an overview of what's going on and hearing from our freshman legislators here. I mean, it's so inspiring to have someone who's just barely a year older than me as an elected official. And I just really, I think it's amazing. And I imagine it's very inspiring for others as well. And so I've been pasting a bunch of links in the chat and I'm seeing some questions if those can be shared afterwards. Yes, we can send a follow-up email with all the links and resources that were mentioned during this portion of the webinar. And we can also make sure to see if we can share those slides as well. And so thanks for those questions. I just really want to say that it's so interesting to see how all of these different issues and topic areas are so intersectional with environmental and climate justice. And so we can't think about all of these different topics such as health and water and housing and without seeing the intersections there, and especially also considering energy. And so I just want to thank all of our panelists for giving an overview of all of those different efforts that are going on in the state. And if I can get my screen spotlighted, that would be great. I do want to bring up a quick thank you slide before we move on. And so just give me 1 second here as I get my stuff sorted out. Okay. So I do just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors one more time, just because I am so appreciative of all the help and making sure that we can get these conversations started and these discussions going. And so just want to give a quick shout out to our partners as well, Center for Environmental Futures, and our partners with Meyer Memorial Trust, and then all of our amazing sponsors you can see here. And so just want to make sure I shared that with everyone. And then now, so we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to jump into a meeting room to have our environmental climate justice policy discussion breakout rooms. And so here is how it's going to work. Crystal, if you can share your instruction slides, that would be really great, just so we can see what's going on. So we just dropped a meeting link in the chat. And so what is going to happen is you will click the meeting and we'll leave the webinar. And so we will have Grace, one of our Beyond Toxics team members, waiting in that meeting room to help you get into a breakout room. And so there are going to be 4 different breakout rooms with 4 different facilitators focused on the following topics of what we discussed. So energy justice, water justice, wildfire resilience, and health. And so, like I said, there will be a facilitator in each room who is going to ask a series of questions to get the discussion started. And so we are hoping that in these breakout rooms, we will identify some priorities as attendees on the types of investments you are hoping to see in your communities regarding the topics that were mentioned previously. And so we are hoping that the discussions today can help us move forward in identifying strong environmental and climate justice investments for Oregon's communities. And we are going to use these discussions to help shape the way we advocate and hopefully help shape the way our elected leadership moves forward with environmental climate justice policies and legislation. So as you can see, we've dropped the meeting link in the chat. And if you are interested in joining us for these breakout discussions, you'll click the meeting link and then you'll be prompted to leave the webinar. And so you can go ahead and press leave and we'll see you in the meeting. And I'm seeing some messages in the chat saying it's the wrong link. So Crystal, if you could make sure to include the actual breakout link, that would be helpful. Sorry, folks. Thank you for being patient with us as we get the right link in there. Although we hope you can join us for the happy hour later on today. So I guess give us a few seconds as we figure this out. Crystal, we're still getting the happy hour link, it seems.
Hey, is the meeting open right now?
I believe it should be. I don't see Grace.
If the meeting's open right now and that link is not working for you, try saving the link and the meeting ID and passcode, and then clicking that link to join while you're logged off with this webinar. And as a backup, you can join a new meeting using that meeting ID and passcode listed there. And I'll hang out on the webinar too if y'all want to jump over and get started with the meeting.
And Crystal, could you confirm that it is not the happy hour? It says join happy hour, but
I wrote happy hour, but I will double check, but I will double check that, yes.
Yes, it would be great if we could repost the correct one with the correct name, just so we're all clear and on the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't think we need the name. I think just post the link would be great. Thank you. Okay, well, it looks like people are jumping over. The meeting is open, so you should be greeted by grace. Okay.
All right, everybody, here's another link. It should be the same. Go ahead and click on that, jump over to the meeting. If you continue to have issues, I'm gonna keep this webinar open for folks that are still having issues, but Haley, feel free to jump off and jump over there. Okay. And